Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your guest co-host, the 2022 MMA Handicapper of the Year, Andrew Gambis. Today, we're going to be talking about UFC 308, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway and my friends. It's going on this Saturday in the morning, live at the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi, UAE. You got the undefeated champion and Gambis, the youngest champion in the UFC right now, the only champion in his 20s in the UFC, Ilia Topuria, who's 15-0, taking on the BMF and the former UFC featherweight champion, Max Holloway, who's 26-7. So without further ado, my friend, let's get down to business. So main event, Topuria versus Holloway. We just mentioned their records. Currently, they got it. Ilia Topuria minus 235. The comeback on Max Blessed Holloway is plus 200. Unbelievable fight. I mean, for Topuria's legacy, you can't consider yourself one of the greatest featherweights of all time until you fight Max Blessed Holloway. Now he's got that chance. And Andrew, one reason I had you on this episode of the show, I mean, minus the fact that I obviously enjoy your takes and respect them, is because you're one of the only people I know that's literally bet on Ilia Topuria in every single fight he's had inside the octagon. But last time, you remember, I had 4 units on him against Volk at like plus 110. I know you were on him against Volk at dog odds as well. Now we're back to, the minus 230s against Blessed Holloway. Are you going to get involved again on Topuria here?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because on one hand, I do feel like the market has corrected, for lack of a better term, on Topuria. He was obviously undervalued against Volk, against Bryce Mitchell, fights like that. Even in his first UFC fight, I bet him on short notice, even like in the COVID days when, he was real young. He only had like 1-round fights for the most part against guys that aren't that good. But yeah, he came in against Yusuf Salal as an underdog, and those days are long gone. I felt like at least at 145, the Volk fight was the last time we get plus money on him. Now at like 70% implied. I guess a guy like Max, who's just so reliable to throw a lot of volume and has historically been so durable, I'm probably not going to get involved at minus 250. If the line came down a little bit, we might be having another conversation. I do think Ilia is going to win the fight, though. I think if anyone has grappling upside here, it's him. I think he has a power edge. I trust his durability at this stage of both of their careers. Max is obviously, he doesn't get KO'd, but he's taken a lot of damage. And, I do feel like that's going to happen at some point, whether it be this fight or in the near future. You can only, get hit to the head so many times in a UFC career. And, Max has set records in terms of taking damage. And Topuria, I just feel like he's been on an upward trajectory for so long. Even in the Volk fight, I saw a lot of takes after that saying that, like it was close or Volk was winning. And like, yeah, I guess technically that could be true. But to me, just the way he was making reads on the feet and just approaching that fight, to me, I as someone who backed him for a pretty large amount of money, there was never a point in that fight where I was worried. It's been, pleasant to see his maturity in the octagon, and just to be able to do that to someone like Volk, I see it being a relatively similar fight here. So I'm picking Topuria to win. What about you?
I was shocked when I saw that all 3 judges scored the first round for Volk, and I was shocked when I look at the stats and they paint a completely different picture than what I saw when I watched that fight with my own eyes. And I rewatched it yesterday. And dude, I mean, that first round, Topuria was walking this man down, setting up that jab, nasty calf kicks, going upstairs with that straight right, rocked him a few times. And I guess maybe towards the end of the first round, there was a little less output from Topuria, but the bigger moments, 100%, and kind of the dictation of the range and pace of the fight was all controlled by Topuria. And then that second round, he turned up the aggression. And the combo he caught him with, I mean, he hit him with a shot that wobbled Volk. And Volk, being the warrior he is, truly went out on his shield. He didn't take a back step. He was trying to swing back while he was rocked. And in that instance, Topuria closed the show. And I want to say something about Max before I forget. Obviously, we all love Max. Max is incredible. But when I was watching tape on this, go watch the third Volkanovski fight. And firstly, while we talk about that, in that 5th round, like while he's in his corner, he's got the biggest cut ever, like blood dripping everywhere. I'm like, man, Max is such a warrior. But you fast forward to the Gaethje fight, and I felt like that was the best performance of Max Holloway's career. Why? He moved up to 155 pounds. And Andrew, I know you remember, firstly, right behind me is the Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier 2 fight, which happened in Atlanta, Georgia, which was the most recent time Max had gone on to 55s, prior to the Gaethje fight, right? And he had even said, like, I think DC was mentioning in the broadcast of the Gaethje and Holloway fight how, Holloway, he didn't come off the couch for that Poirier fight, but, he didn't have enough time to really put on size the right way. Whereas for the Gaethje fight, this dude had plenty of months' notice. He bulked up, and you saw the size of Max Holloway in that fight against Gaethje. He looked filled out. He looked like a big lightweight. It looked like, wow, after a performance like this, you're going to have to carry on that momentum. And if you want, you could maybe even go fight Islam. You could go fight any of these top 5 guys at 155 pounds. So to me, I understand it's a title shot. At 45, title shot means big money, big opportunity, chance to become champ again. But I just wish that Max built off that momentum of how good he looked at 55 and go on a 55 run, man. You've accomplished everything there is to accomplish at 45. So I don't like it when guys go back up and then come back down and this and that, especially when you're dealing with this kind of weight cut. Your compadre, Magic, made some very good tweets regarding this. He even mentioned how, like, the lower body of Max Holloway, this dude don't got skinny legs. This dude was filled out, looking big, looking like almost like he might end his career at welterweight. And now you're dropping back down. Again, Andrew, I know this is speculative narrative, but I mean, I just can't not mention it when he went out of his way to mention how, hey, we put on the size the right way. And now what's happened? Now you're getting rid of that size, all that work you put in. I don't like that, man. I just really don't like that. And then as far as the stylistics, I think that, Topuria has got some of the best boxing in the UFC, just like Max, but the defense difference is night and day. I don't like Max has so much pride in his chin and his ability to take damage. Topuria is not a guy you want to take damage against. And like you said, man, this ground game that no one talks about. You know that clip I sent you the other night of round 5 of the Emmett fight? Oh, yeah. People don't talk about it. This is round 5 after a lot of output has been dished. And this dude, Topuria, is going out there, taking down a seriously credentialed wrestler in Josh Emmett, getting through any of his, attacks like the Granby rolls and whatnot, shut all that down, takes his back, flattens him out. I'm like, yeah, Topuria is the more well-rounded guy here. And if anyone has a chance to be the first to knock out the great Max Holloway, and all respect to Holloway, I think it might be Topuria, and I think it might be this Saturday night. But regardless, I'm picking Topuria and still. I was talking to my professor, my jiu-jitsu professor about this earlier, and he was bringing up, well, what happens in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th? Because that's usually when Max starts to pick things up. But I'm thinking to myself, man, like the last title fight he lost a 5-round fight, and that was the 3rd Volk fight. What about the 2nd Volk fight, the one that people kind of call the robbery? Max came out hard early. It was Max that was fading in those championship rounds in the 2nd Volk fight, the one that people call the robbery. So I'm not convinced about this narrative that, oh, Max takes over late if he doesn't get knocked out early. I think that Topuria showed in that Emmett fight, although a completely different style, body type, fighting style, all that he can put up the kind of volume necessary to match Max Holloway. He can carry that volume deep into the fights. He can grapple deep into fights. And I think he's going to have an answer for the great, legendary Max Holloway. And I just hope that Max can go up to 55, fill out again, go on a title run there. I don't like him dropping down to featherweight here. I'm going in still. Now, co-main event of the evening in the middleweight division. We got 2 former welterweights. But one of these former welterweights is the former middleweight champion. We're talking about Robert Whittaker. He's 26-7, taking on Khamzat Chimaev, who's 13-0. Currently, they got a Chimaev minus 265. The comeback on Whittaker is plus 225. So Listen, man, I've been seeing a lot of stuff on the internet talking about how Khamzat, people that have zero business talking about aura, saying that Khamzat has no aura anymore. And the reasons they're giving is he grew his hair out and he put on glasses. Those are the reasons why it comes, that he lost his aura. I'm like, give me like a good example of maybe him getting dominated in a fight. And I want to talk about that Usman fight because I watched that again last night. And man, I have never seen Usman get dominated grappling like that, like he did in that first round, even in that third round, the takedowns that Khamzat was able to set up. And the fact that one judge had the audacity to score that fight a draw, like, are you stupid? Like, what the hell were you? Like, I think, and this might be controversial, I know it will be, I think 30-26 Chimaev is a better scorecard than a draw in that spot. I don't see any way you can say that was a draw or that Usman won. Like, when's the last time you saw Usman get taken down and ragdoll like that? And it could have been a first-round TKO. I mean, he takes him down, has him fully flattened out, starts, landing the shots. Usman, being the stud he is, got back to his knees. And, then it was like a standing rear naked choke attempt, which shout out to Usman for surviving that. But people will say, oh, but Usman took the fight on short notice. What, you telling me Usman forgot how to wrestle just because he took the fight on short notice? Usman's a lifelong wrestler. You don't just ragdoll a guy like that. So, and then the whole thing about Chimaev slowing down in fights, Andrew, I mean, he might slow down, but that doesn't mean that he can't get a second win in later rounds, firstly. And secondly, he's not slowing down to the point where, oh, now he's like getting full mounted and dominated. What his version of slowing down is in that third round. He shot a bunch of takedowns that didn't land, kind of some ugly looks, kind of went head first in the mat at times. But when he finally got Usman down, he dominated. So I don't get these narratives, man. It's crazy to me. All respect to Whittaker, man. I feel like nowadays it's cool to be a Whittaker fan, but it's like, it wasn't cool back when I was betting Whittaker at plus 205 against Jacare. It wasn't cool when I was betting Whittaker at dog odds against Uriah Hall and Brad Tavares. Now it's cool. So I'm just saying, man, I think that when you look at that Duplessis fight and you see Duplessis judo throw Robert Whittaker, historically amazing takedown defense, but these new middleweights coming up, a different level of physicality, and that judo throw, I cannot get that out my head. I cannot get that Darce choke attempt out my head. I think that Chimaev's going to come out here, take this man down, and I'm calling either a rear naked choke or a Darce choke finish. I think he's going to be the first man in UFC history to submit the great, legendary Robert Whittaker.
Yeah, I'm with you. I favor Chimaev here. I mean, the only real question mark for me at this point, we've seen Chimaev beat really good guys. Like, that Usman victory, no matter how you want to slice it, is super. Like, to me, that's the most impressive thing he's ever done. That's more impressive to me than him, submitting someone in a minute or, taking down Kevin Holland and submitting it. Like him beating Usman for 3 rounds, super impressive. And, the narrative after that, and like, in my opinion, there is some justification. It is, if that was a 5-round fight, Usman could have came on late. And like, yeah, that's totally true. But also you're not going to get a more difficult matchup in terms of wrestling at 185 or 170 than Kamaru Usman. Like you mentioned, his takedown defense in his UFC career has been flawless. And, the first round, Chimaev takes him down and takes his back immediately. And I just don't think most guys survive that. Like Usman, the top notch of the top notch survive that. I just don't think most people in the division or even in the UFC survive that. For me here, it's like, it's enough of a price to not get involved, given the fact that we haven't seen Chimaev go 5 hard rounds. I feel like if you're gonna bet Whittaker, it's probably avoid the doom early and try to fish for live. But I do think Chimaev's gonna get it done. Like you mentioned, Duplessis getting on top of Whittaker with a elementary level throw doesn't bode well here. And yeah, I mean, we're on the same page about. Whittaker has had a ton of UFC fights where he's huge value, especially as an underdog early on. But I do think this is a really rough matchup for him. Chimaev, you mentioned both of them had fought at 170 before. Chimaev is very physical. He's a fantastic wrestler and grappler. He's strong as an ox. I tend to think that he does get it done similar to how you do.
Yeah, and shout out Whittaker, one of my all-time favorite fighters, but Not just now because it's cool. I've loved this, love watching this man fight for years. It's funny. My dad was at the gym like maybe 10, 15 years ago when Whittaker was fighting Brad Scott for the Ultimate Fighter finale. And he called me up. He's like, "Have you seen this kid, Roger Whittaker?" He called him Roger Whittaker. I was like, "Yeah, I know who that is." He was very impressed with him. And look, he went on to become a champion. So shout out Whittaker. You're the man. But again, my whole thing about, just because it's 5 rounds, now he's automatically going to gas and lose the later rounds. I'm not convinced. I think that fighters can get second wins. I mean, look at that Cyborg Pacheco fight. Like, Pacheco started taking over in that 3rd round. It seemed like, okay, now it's heading in her direction. All of a sudden, Cyborg makes those adjustments, wins the 4th and 5th. So just because you lost the 3rd round doesn't mean automatically you're going to lose the 4th and 5th. I feel like all that is just bullshit speculation and narrative. I have to see this man dominated. And like, because he pushes through fatigue. Like you and I were at the Burns fight. Were there some moments? Okay, sure. But was it clear as day that Khamzat won? Yes. So, I got Chimaev here. Let's see what happens. Featured bout in the light heavyweight division. We got Magomed Ankalaev. He's 19-1-1, taking on Aleksandar Rakic, who's 14-4. Currently, they got it. Ankalaev minus 385. The comeback on Rakic is plus 310. I think that Ankalaev gets this win here, and he might be next for Ferreira. But Rakic has the chance to do something very funny. But do you trust him to do so?
Yeah, I don't know if I trust Rakic to do so. I do think it's dog or pass at this line, though, just given the fact that Ankalaev, he doesn't always come out shooting takedowns. Sometimes he could fight a little closer than he needs to. Like if you look at both of their striking performances against Jan Blachowicz, they're pretty comparable. However, I do give Ankalaev some advantages here. Like I think if anyone does have grappling success, it's him. I trust his durability a little bit more. I think he probably has if you told me someone's going to win the fight by knockout, it's probably him. That being said, I do think Rakic competes on minutes. Like, gun to my head, I would say 29-28 Ankalaev type of fight. But I do think it'll be a competitive fight. And if it does go to the cards, I would probably imagine it plays out closer than minus 300. But you have to favor Ankalaev here, in my opinion, given the finishing upside, potential wrestling upside. Rakic has never really fought someone who's a good wrestler that attempts a lot of takedowns. It's just, Ankalaev hasn't always been reliable to come out doing that.
Yeah, like when I max bet him in his title fight against Jan Blachowicz, and everyone says, everyone acts like that fight never happened. Like how come this guy hasn't got his title shot yet? He did get his title shot, and I max bet him in that title shot. He got his leg kicked off for 3 straight rounds, and then he finally made that adjustment in the 4th and 5th to take this guy down. Thank God we got a 10-8, Gombas, because I got away with a draw. Because it was 3-2 Jan Blachowicz, okay? So thank God for that 10-8 later in the fight. But, man, I could go off on a rant about that, but that's not what's important here. What's important here is this matchup. And here's how I see it playing out, man. I think that Rakic is going to have a lot of leg-kicking success early, just like all these guys do. However, and it's not just Blachowicz, even Johnny Walker earlier in their fight. But I think that eventually, Ankalaev is going to start to make his reads, start to make his adjustments. And one big mistake, not big mistake, but just a bad tendency that and a habit that Rakic has, that he's always had, is he exits the pocket with that chin straight up in the air. This is something that Devin Clark made him pay for. This is something that Yuri made him pay for, but in a different way. Yuri kind of just took everything he had up front, and then when it was his turn to return the favor, boy, did he do so. Broke that man. I just don't see Rakic having more success than, some early leg kick success, but eventually Ankalaev is going to make those reads, those adjustments, and his hands are significantly better than Rakic. And I think he's going to capitalize on Rakic exiting the pocket with that chin in the air, and whether it's a knockout or a 29-28 decision, I see Ankalaev winning this fight. His first round is usually his slowest, but like if you watch his Krylov fight, the adjustments he made in the 2nd and 3rd were like, okay, yeah, this is serious. And I just think that if there's one of them that's on a title trajectory, obviously it's the guy on a 12-fight unbeaten streak, despite what happened in the Blachowicz fight. So, yeah, when this fight first got announced, I saw the odds. I was like, oh, plus 300 Rakic. Like, damn. But then I go back and watch the tape, and it's like, Rakic is so underwhelming for a guy that has like the physique and looks like the athlete that he is. Like, I had high hopes for him, and I just think at this point, if he hasn't gotten a title shot at this point, it's not going to happen. And yeah, you could view this as a letdown spot, but just stylistically, I think that Ankalaev is going to capitalize on those openings that Rakic leaves when he exits the pocket, chin in the air. So for that reason, I'm going Ankalaev for the dub. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Lerone Murphy. He's 14-0-1, taking on Dan Ige, who's 18-8. Currently, they got it Murphy minus 265. The comeback on Ige is plus 225. So Lerone Murphy's heading back where it all started. He started his UFC career in Abu Dhabi during the COVID days. Now he's had Apex main events. Now he's back to where it all started against 50K Ige, a guy who, if you're not quite ready for the top 15 or the top 10, Dan Ige is going to expose that, and he's going to expose it in a way where you might get knocked unconscious. You might not come back the same. But the thing about it is I see top 5 potential in Lerone Murphy. His volume that last fight against Edson was unreal. Like 220 significant strikes over 5 rounds. So it was what, like 120 to 140 over 3 rounds? Like, yeah, that's way more volume than Ige. What I do think Ige has the advantage in is maybe toughness, durability, and punching power. But I think the far more skilled fighter here is Lerone Murphy. I think he picks him apart. I wouldn't be surprised if he even took the back of Ige at times. Ige does love to give up his back, but I think Ige will hang in there tough. Make it the distance. But I think it's going to be a clear Lerone Murphy decision win. And like I said, I think this guy has top 5 potential.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, that performance against Edson was really, really impressive in my opinion. And it's impossible to ignore his statistical advantages here. His volume's good. I think he's a better minute winner here. You mentioned Ige's tough, and he does, find a way to hang in there, stay in fights. He's not going to go away, but I just see Murphy kind of getting ahead on the scorecard and staying there. It's a fight that's heavily favored to go the distance, and it's tough to ignore the volume stats here. Could Ige hurt Murphy? Sure, but Murphy's not exactly a guy we see get hurt very often. Don't give either guy a ton of grappling upside. So, in what I assume will be a striking fight that goes 3 rounds, you have to favor Murphy here.
Now, kicking off the main card in the middleweight division, we got Shara Bullet Magomedov. He's 14-0, taking on Armen Petrosyan, who's 8-3. Currently, they got it. Shara, just depends where you look, everywhere from I'm seeing from minus 150 all the way to minus 178. So, it's all over the board. And Petrosyan, plus 135-ish, plus 140-ish. So I got to know your opinion on this because you're a guy that successfully bet on Petrosyan, I think more than once. I know for sure you bet him in the AJ Dobson fight, and that was a beautiful bet. The volume was really on point. Are you going back to the well here?
Yeah, I've actually had pretty good success on Petrosyan fights. I bet Rodolfo Vieira against him. I bet Petrosyan against Christian Leroy Duncan. And I think,
real quick. Did you not bet him against AJ Dobson?
I would have to check that one. I feel like I might have.
I swear you did. But either way,
check live on the stream. Let's see.
Yeah. And the Leroy Duncan was a great fucking bet too. That was a sick fight, by the way. I watched that last night.
That was a fun one. No, I didn't bet him against AJ Dobson. I bet him against Christian Duncan, and I bet Rodolfo Vieira against him. So I got the last couple right. But I'm picking him to win this fight. I know that there's a lot of hype behind Shara Bullet. I think some of it's warranted and some of it's not. Like, he's clearly not a bum. He's coming to the UFC and won 3 straight fights. I'm not here to tell you that he's a shitty fighter or anything like that. I just think in a striking fight against a guy like Petrosyan, who outlanded Gregory Rodriguez 127-61 at distance, like Petrosyan's a guy who's never been outlanded at distance in the UFC. And I kind of just think he's being a little bit underrated here, but because he lost to a grappler, which isn't relevant here. Like, Shara's not going to take him down. I actually think, if anything, Petrosyan might land a takedown or two. And if you look at who Petrosyan lost to in his whole UFC career, it's Kyle Baralho, who I think we're all in pretty much agreement now. He's one of the top guys in the division. And he lost to Rodolfo Vieira, who's an incredible grappler. And none of it's relevant here. To me, like, him having those striking performances against Christian Leroy Duncan and Gregory Rodriguez is more impressive than anything Shara has done to me. Like, even the Bruno Silva fight was pretty close for Shara. And yeah, I mean, I don't expect it to be an uncompetitive fight. Like, I actually think regardless of who wins this fight, like, I can't really see either guy being more than like 65% here. I just think at the line, it's dog or pass. I personally favor Petrosyan. I'm expecting a close fight. I think it probably goes the distance. I think it's favored to go to decision right now. Yeah, minus 280 over 2.5. And until I see someone outstrike Petrosyan over 15 minutes, you know, I would take him against most guys in the division in a 15-minute striking fight.
No, I mean, I don't think you bring up bad points at all. I think everything you said is super valid. I'm actually on the opposite side, and I'll tell you why. It's not about buying the hype or any bullshit like that.
Yeah, of course.
Stylistically, so Petrosyan, obviously a super, like, meat and potatoes, just classic, traditional kickboxer. That's what he is. And the thing, the place I think he's gonna have an issue here is that I think he's a bit flat-footed, whereas what's his name? Shara, whereas Shara Magomedov, he's always moving around. He's always on whether it's lateral, whether it's on the back foot, the front foot. He's always giving you a moving, elusive target. And I think that Petrosyan might actually struggle with that because, like, look, if Shara wants to bang in the pocket with Petrosyan, then I give Petrosyan a lot better chance. It's just that I think it might be a situation where Petrosyan's kind of chasing Shara all night long. It's going to be a competitive kickboxing match. And I just don't think, no guy named Magomedov is losing a judge's decision in Abu Dhabi. So I'm going Shara Magomedov. I mean, did you see that boxing match with Bivol and the other dude recently?
I just saw some of the highlights. I didn't watch the fight, though.
Okay. So, like, many people thought that Bivol clearly won the fight, but they're, getting ready to announce the decision. And, in boxing, a bunch of people enter the ring, like, right before. So I see, like, fucking, like, powerful leaders of certain countries and republics getting into the ring there, who are on the side of the guy who ended up getting his arm raised. Right when I saw that, I was like, oh, so I know what's about to happen here. And just saying, there's going to be very powerful people in attendance at this event. And people can say, oh, it's not Abu Dhabi judges. It's the same judges as always. Yeah, it's the same judges as always, except now they have world leaders sitting 5 feet away from them. And as the only way I think that Armen wins is if Armen is super decisive. Because if this is close, I don't think they want, I don't know if they even drink alcohol over there, but I don't think they want trash thrown into the octagon. So I'm going to go Shara to come out here and get this decision win. So, guys, I want to give a huge shout out to Bet105 for sponsoring today's episode of Half the Battle. Bet105, check them out at bet105.eu. They're an emerging sports book that don't limit winners. They offer some of the best odds in the market, and they got quick, smooth, easy payouts. So you literally can't go wrong with them. And right now, when we got this big UFC card coming up, we got the World Series. We got NFL on the reg. I know tons of y'all are looking for new outs and new spots to get your action down. You're sick of getting limited. You're sick of these guys making you run through every single hoop to get paid out. Bet105 don't play that bullshit. So, guys, hit them up at bet105.eu. Tell them I sent you, and enjoy the betting experience that they bring to the table. So thank you very much, Bet105, for sponsoring today's episode of Half the Battle. And best of luck to everyone this weekend on their bets. Now, Andrew, next up in the 205-pound division, we got a matchup between Ibu Aslan. He's 13-1, taking on the newcomer Raffael Cerqueira, who's 11-0. Currently, they got it. Wow. So it's a pick 'em with a slight lean on the newcomer. And what's interesting about that, Andrew, is there's not much available footage on the newcomer. But let me say this. One thing I did notice when I was watching him, I didn't think he was bad at all. But one thing I thought was like, okay, my boy's got a little love handles. It'd probably, be advantageous for him to drop a weight class. And that's what he's doing here, Andrew. So I'm glad to see this guy's taking it seriously, going to the right weight class. But I just don't feel like I know enough about him. What I have seen is, he's kind of an unorthodox striker in the sense that he will throw some flashy stuff. He's gotten spin knockouts. He'll walk forward. He's a lot of fun to watch. Whereas on the other side with Ibo, he's just the kind of guy that will bite down on that mouthpiece and just chuck absolute bombs. There's been criticism about, his gas tank due to the fact that he throws 100% into every shot. But as you saw in that last fight against an ultra durable opponent with an insane shin, the power carried through to the third round. I thought that was a big step in the right direction. And you got to consider the fact the kid's only like 27, 28. So he's going to be making improvements. I just haven't seen enough from the newcomer to line him a favorite here. So if Ibo goes back to dog odds, I might be interested. Curious to hear your take.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. Like you said, not much tape on the newcomer. Aslan, we saw him in a pretty extended fight with the Pleasure Man. From what I've seen on tape, I feel like Aslan's the better fighter. I get a little pause though, just knowing that Raffael is one of Jailton Almeida's main training partners, and Jailton speaks pretty highly of him. So I feel like the potential downside is too high on Aslan to bet him. At least that's how I felt when he was the favorite. If the line keeps moving, we might be having another conversation, but we haven't seen I haven't been able to find any of his grappling on tape, and just the potential downside, if it turns out that he is a pretty good grappler, this line could be completely off. From what I saw striking, I haven't seen a lot that impresses me. He hasn't fought a very good level of competition. So gun to my head, I'm picking Aslan just because I'm going off of what my eyes tell me, but I wouldn't be surprised if, we see a part of Rafael's game that we've never seen before.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, with only like a 2-fight sample size to pick from, what I gathered was this guy's not in any kind of rush to take you down. He likes to strike, whereas, Jailton, the second the bell rings, he's running right at you. But again, we haven't seen those other 8 or however many fights, so we don't really, it's tough to really say when you haven't seen much. But I've seen Ibo's entire career, so I know exactly who he is. I'd love to find out who Raffael is, but if they give me dog odds on Ibo, I'm going to consider it. So let's see what happens. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Geoff Neal. He's 15-6, taking on RDA, Rafael dos Anjos, who's 32-16. Currently, they got it. Geoff Neal minus 280. The comeback on RDA is plus 240. Man, it's so unfortunate that Geoff Neal had that near-death experience, and he just hasn't been the same since because, he's the last man to beat the current UFC welterweight champion, Belal Muhammad. And he didn't just beat him. He beat him in very impressive fashion. And the athletic takedown defense he had in that fight against Belal, who you saw the entries he had on Leon, like, damn, Geoff Neal, at that point, I thought this guy could have been a champ. But it's so unfortunate. He had congenital heart failure. He had sepsis, all these things. It's like, damn. And the fact that you still came back to the UFC, you've won fights, you've competed with studs. Like, hey, all respect to Geoff Neal for that. But it's unfortunately not the same guy, Andrew. It's just not. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's still really good. Let's not twist it. He's still a very good fighter. He's just not the guy that was on a title trajectory. But the good news for him here, man, is that RDA, legend of the sport. I mean, he won the UFC belt, back in 2015 when he beat Pettis? You remember that Pettis fight? That was a domination. And RDA is just a legendary fighter. But this is actually the first time that Geoff Neal is going to fight someone that much shorter than him, that much smaller than him. I mean, Geoff Neal's been fighting Shavkat, who's 6'3". Let's go through all these guys that Geoff Neal's been fighting. Like, the size difference here is about to be something that he hasn't experienced. Okay, Ian Machado Gary, 6'3". Shavkat Rakhmonov, 6'3". Luque, 6 feet. Ponzinibbio, 6'1". Magny, 6'3". Stephen Thompson, 6'1". Like, this is the run he's had since he's come back from nearly dying. And Now he gets to fight a dude that's 5'8". You got the reach advantage. You got the height advantage. You got the youth advantage. And even though Geoff might not be as fast as he used to be, he's still fast as hell. He's going to be a lot faster than RDA. And we mentioned Geoff has insane takedown defense. Shavkat couldn't take him down. Bilal couldn't take him down. Say less. And this was Geoff against Bilal was prime Geoff. Geoff against Shavkat was a Geoff that missed weight by 5 pounds, looking terrible, and still stuffed all the takedowns. So I love RDA, but ever since that Luque fight, I think he's only got a few left before it's time to hang up the gloves. Maybe Saturday night. You never know. So, yeah, while I'm hesitant to lay a price like this on Geoff Neal, who's been super inconsistent in current form, I just think that this is one of the better matchups he's had in a long time. When he gets a smaller opponent, I really think he can bully him. And not to mention the age and speed advantages. Yeah, give me Geoff Neal here.
Yeah, and on the flip side, we've seen RDA struggle at size disadvantages. There's times where I feel like if he were similar size to his opponent, he would have won the fight. Like Luque is a recent example that comes to mind. Like he just was getting so close on his takedowns, but Luque was just a little bit too big for him. Neal, you mentioned historically has had very good takedown defense. I don't think RDA could compete much on the feet here. Neal should be faster, better striker. RDA, one of the tougher guys in the sport, one of the more well-rounded guys in the sport. So it wouldn't totally shock me if, he outperforms my expectations a little bit here. Just on paper, it's a rough matchup for him. I personally think Neal's going to get it done.
Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a prospect showdown. We got Myktybek, Orolbai. He's 13-1-1, taking out Mateusz Rębecki, who's 19-2. And currently, they got it. Here's where it gets interesting, my friend. They got it. Myktybek, Orolbai, minus 310. The comeback on Rębecki is plus 260. And just in terms of rankings, if you look at Tapology, Orolbai is number 34. Rębecki's number 32. So these guys are on the cusp of entering the top 25 of 155 pounds. I think both these guys are absolute studs. I'm going to tell you my opinion in a sec. But first, I want to hear yours because I think that this is one of the wider lines that might kind of not be accurate. So tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat here. I think it's probably not a bad buy low spot on Rębecki after him being minus 400 against CDF, who, I backed CDF in that spot. I thought the line was crazy, but, Rębecki still gave him hell for the first however many minutes. Like he pushes a pace like a mother effer. And I expect him to do that here again. I mean, he's a powerhouse for lack of a better term. And Orolbai, a guy who I'm relatively high on Orolbai as well, but we're having a different conversation here at minus 300 than if it was a pick'em. Like Orolbai, he has some talent wrestling. He's some talent striking too. He's at Team Alpha Male, which is a respectable gym. I guess I'll bounce this question back to you. Like, what does Orolbai covering minus 300 look like? Like he just comes out and dominates in wrestling, or?
So there's this narrative about Rębecki having this cardio issue. He goes hard early, kind of fades. But, isn't that exactly what happened to Orolbai in that Brenner fight? So it's not just one guy. It's both these guys go balls to the wall. It's going to be a head-on collision here, man. So, yeah. So there are certain things, there's an 8-inch reach advantage. But it's easy to say that. But you also have to bring up Rębecki's used to being significantly smaller, having that reach disadvantage. And when what's his record? 19-2, he's figured out how to, fight to his body type. So how does Orolbai look as a big favorite? I mean, I think he has to, is it him that has to weather the storm? Because it's like he comes out hard too. So it's, I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll speak for myself. When I'm backing a big favorite, I don't want them to have to be weathering any kind of storm. Like if you're, minus 300 is already getting to 75% implied. So for there to be value on a minus 300, I don't want them struggling much at all in that type of fight. And I don't see Orolbai running Rębecki over. I think it's gonna be a good fight. It's dog or pass. If you ask me who's gonna win, I'm not very confident, but I'm pretty confident at this line. It's dog or pass. Like I could see a scenario where the line's way off for Rębecki. Like there could be $1 plus. There could be $1 or more worth of value on Rębecki. I can't see any scenario where there's $1 or more value on Orolbai. Like unless he just turns out to be the best fighter in the world and Rębecki turns out to be not as advertised. Like I can't imagine minus 300 looking like big value. Where I could see a scenario where Rębecki does look like big value here. So I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, I'm going to go with him as well. Again, it's not about, oh, I'm so confident he's going to win. It's more about the odds. Like, I think this is a much closer fight than the line indicates. I also think Rębecki's got a lot more experience than this kid. Look, I think Orolbai is a stud, right? And when I was watching his tape, the first 2 rounds against Brenner, I was like, fuck, man, I don't want to fade this guy. But then once things started going south, it was like he's getting full mounted by Brenner. He's getting his back taken. And let me say something about that Rębecki versus Diego Ferreira fight. I mean, in that first round, he was walking him down without a care in the world. He dropped him. Different guys in that scenario get finished there. But, and one thing that the commentators weren't even mentioning is how elite Diego Ferreira is in jiu-jitsu. I personally think Diego Ferreira is one of the top 5 jiu-jitsu guys in the UFC. People just don't know about that. Like, didn't he beat Gary Tonin in pure jiu-jitsu, this guy? Like, Diego don't play. And so what happened was in that second round, here was the turning point. So Rębecki gets this easy double leg. I'm talking like the easiest double leg of his life. But now you're playing in Diego Ferreira's guard. Immediately he's throwing up subs. He had this nasty sweep where he puts both feet on the hips, elevates him, and from there, that's when things started to go downhill for Rębecki. The thing about it is, even deep into that fight, when he was hurting, when it seemed like, okay, it's going downhill, he's still trying. He's still, grappling competitively with an elite jiu-jitsu black belt. And this kid, Orolbai, listen, he is just a kid. He was born in 1998. I think that it might be time to pay some dues here, man. So, look, I can't confidently say I think that Rębecki is going to win, but what I can confidently say is that I think this line should be closer. So, yeah, it's dog or pass for me. I'm going to go ahead and take the dog as well. So, may the best man win. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Abus Magomedov. He's 26-6, taking on Bruno Ferreira, who's 12-1. Currently, they got it. Abus Magomedov minus 135. The comeback on Bruno Ferreira is plus 115. A lot of people are giving Abus a second chance. Are you one of those guys?
Yeah, I've been higher on the market than Abus for a while now. And, we were talking about guys that have lost, like I was saying earlier, that Petrosyan lost to Barajo and lost to Rodolfo Vieira, 2 tough guys. Barajo being a tough guy, being a top guy, and then Abus. You look at his 2 UFC losses to Sean Strickland, a former champ, and Kyle Barajo, who a lot of people think's a future champ. And even in that Strickland fight, he won the first round against Sean Strickland, and obviously it unfolded or unraveled for him pretty quickly after that. But you still have to be very skilled to win a round off of Sean Strickland. I don't care who you are. And it's, Barajo beat him, but it's not like he went out and mopped the floor with him. It's not like he went out there and, 30, 20, 25 them and, 10-8'd him and almost finished him. It was competitive early in that fight. And then you see how he's performed against guys like Dustin Stoltzfus and Warley Alves. Like, he handles business against that tier of competition. Bruno Ferreira on the other side, it's a lot of round ones. He also beat Stoltzfus in round 1. The difference is he was struggling in that first round before he landed a spinning back elbow. Phil Hawes, we all know the deal with him. Nursultan Ruzboev, put him out in the first round. And then he put out Gregory Rodriguez in the first round. At this price, you have to, in my opinion, you have to take the guy who you've seen could win a 15-minute decision in the UFC. I think if anyone gets top time upside here, it's Abus. He took down Warley Alves like 6 times and got double-digit minutes worth of top time. And I just, he's a lot longer than Bruno. If he has the grappling upside, I think he's more skilled. I think it's a discount here on him. And you mentioned earlier, I actually wrote it down when you said it to bring it back up again, but his last name ends in OV. And if it's if it's competitive, I hope that's the case here. So yeah, I'm on Abus here.
Yeah, no, I mean, if this fight goes to decision, Abus is winning. But you know what my concerns are? It's actually not the concerns of like, oh, he gassed out so bad against Strickland. And that's not my concern. My concern is that Bruno can starch many people early. And this man, Abus, did you see the Lewis Taylor fight? I mean, granted,
Yeah,
that's a champion too. So it's not like he got, knocked out by a bum. Lewis put the guns down Taylor. Shout out to him. That he went out as a champ. He retired as a champ. So it's not like he lost to some, slouch. But man, Bruno, my thing with Bruno is I don't like the in-betweens. It's not like he fights behind a jab or like, the in-betweens aren't there. But when he swings to kill. And this man he's fighting has been killed more than once. So that's my concern. I do agree with you, though. If this goes the distance, I mean, no guy named Magomedov is losing a judge's decision in Abu Dhabi. That's the bottom line. But I don't know, man. I think that Bruno might have that first round finishing upside here. So, pre-fight, I'm actually going to go with Bruno here. I know if I'm picking him out right, I should bet him. It's hard to get motivated when like I know what'll happen if he doesn't get that first round finish. I think he gets grinded, and like you said, Abus showed a lot of maturity that last fight. Not just the performance itself, but the fact that he was able to overcome the mental hurdles of what happened the two fights prior, where, despite it being Strickland, former champ, Caio Bahaio, future title challenger at least, they were still demoralizing losses. And people were saying Abus is the biggest fraud they've ever seen. So to come back against Warley, have that 3-round performance, and I also think that, he's been taking his Flintstone vitamins, because if you watch that Warley fight, I mean, they were you should take a look at his back is all I got to say, man. So I don't know. I'm like going back and forth, man. It's not about you influencing my decision or anything like that, because even going into this, I felt like, okay, Abus is the better processed fighter. This goes the distance, and it's a 3-round game plan type fight. He wins that, but I think Bruno has a chance to just come out here and land that overhand, land that spin, whatever the case may be, because I've seen it happen to this man before. So it's not confident, and I wish you the best because you're the one with money on the line, but I'm going to go with Bruno to come out here and upset him via starching him. So let's see what happens. Now, next up, and I'm very curious about your opinion on this. Next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Kennedy and Nzechukwu, who's 12-5. Taking on Chris Barnett, who's 23-8. Currently, they got it. So, just so you know, my friend, when we first started the show, it was minus 750. Since we've been talking, now it's minus 900, Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still some books with some minus 650s and whatnot, but minus 900, the comeback on Chris Barnett is plus 600. Now, I would normally not ever, spill your business, but you publicly posted a ticket on a $27,000 bet on Junior Tafa to defeat Chris Barnett. I think that Kennedy and Nzechukwu, I know he's beat higher level competition than Junior Tafa. I know he's more experienced. I also know, can we talk about the size difference in this fight real quick? Do you know what it is off the top of your head? I see it right in front of me. Don't look it up. Do you know what it is off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I think Kennedy has an 83-inch reach and Barnett has 75.
Yes, sir. And what
I
about
don't know
height?
the height. The height, I would guess, what is Kennedy, like 6'4"?
6'5"?
6'5". Barnett's probably like 5'9" or 5'10", right?
He's listed at 5'9", but like he trains in Georgia. I think he's like 5'8", bro. So,
I didn't even know he trains.
He might just be in the gym for encouragement for his teammates, But look, you gotta love Chris as a personality. When he gets those knockouts, he does his fun celebration. But like, I've seen guys with losing records knock this man out on the regional scene. Shout out to my boy Terrence Hodges. I don't want to be a dick saying he's got a losing record, but like that's a dude from the Georgia scene who went out there and starched this man. And I just don't think Chris Barnett belongs in the UFC. No disrespect. I love watching him. But wait, fuck my breakdown. You put $27K on Junior Tafa. Let's get back to the point. Did you, put a little something on Kennedy here?
Sorry, I was muted. No, I did not. I actually, to circle back to the whole Tafa thing, I thought the spot was Kennedy at -150 against Tafa. Like I wanted to play that before that got canceled. But yeah, I mean, what's there really to say here? Kennedy's, bigger, better, like an actual fighter. I think if he wants to take a path of least resistance here, he could just, shoot a takedown and the fight could be over a couple minutes later. I don't see him having much of an issue at all in this fight.
No, but why? Okay, what line did you bet 27K on when he was initially?
I on -270.
Okay. I don't know why I was under the impression it was like -500 or something.
No,
Okay.
it was 20. It was to win 10,000.
Okay. Yeah. It all makes sense now. Yeah, I see why you're not putting that much on -900 because it's probably accurate, whereas -270 was not accurate. Okay.
Yeah, I would bet Kennedy at -270, like even bigger than that. I think Kennedy's a worse matchup for Barnett than Tafa by a pretty good margin. Like even -370. Like I think the true price here literally is around -900.
Yeah, listen, Kennedy's had his ups and downs, and he's underperformed, especially for a guy with the physical attributes that he has. I've expected more, but I still think he's on a different level than this guy. And yeah, I mean, 8-inch reach advantage, all that. Barnett not really belonging. Barnett, credit for the Vellante win, but Vellante is like, how many cheeseburgers did he eat before that fight? And then the other one against Collier. Collier was looking like a K1 striker that first round against him, but Collier got so arrogant. Collier's like smiling when he's striking, which is something you've never seen from Jake Collier, but he thought this was a joke, whereas Kennedy's been battle tested, has fought tons of ranked opposition, different level, different size, etc. We can go on about this -900. No reason to do it anymore. We're both going Kennedy. Now, next up, we also got a big favorite in the bantamweight division. We got Farid Basharat. He's 12-0, taking on Victor Hugo, who's 25-4. Currently, they got it. Farid -650. The comeback on Victor Hugo is +475. So here it's interesting because I don't think Hugo is that bad. I mean, I think there's certain things about his game that I wish were different. I wish he threw with more volume. I'm not that big into leg lock guys. I'm not, I'd rather someone fight behind a jab and good leg kicks instead of just throwing a bunch of spins. But at the same time, when you look at this man's record, 25-4, and he's on an insane win streak, bro. He hasn't lost since 2014. 2014, my friend. And he's beat some real guys on his regional scene. We saw the other Basharat brother get upset by Zahabi at crazy odds like this. Now, I've always thought Farid was better. I mean, I was blown away by his Damon Blackshear fight and the Taylor Lapilus fight. He did exactly what he had to do, whether it was exciting or not. But my concern with this is that Victor's going to be running away the entire time. I think he has the chance to frustrate Farid. But at the end of the day, Farid's volume and pressure should be the difference here, especially against a leg lock / spin guy. But the thing that gives me pause is that I do think Victor Hugo belongs in the UFC. I do think he's that experienced. He's that seasoned. He's got those vet tactics, hasn't lost in 10 years. Like, he ain't some fucking novice coming out here. So what do you think, man? I mean, do you think the price is warranted, or is it maybe this is one where it could be a little closer?
Yeah, I mean, is there a scenario where Basharat should be wider than -650? Probably not. Can there be a scenario where Hugo's a lot better than +480? Yeah, there probably is. So it just kind of comes like spots like this kind of comes down to your risk tolerance, because do you favor Basharat? Of course you do. He's the better process. He's the better fighter. Could Hugo potentially make things happen? Like, yeah, he could. I mean, I think so at a better clip than the line implies. But I mean, I'm gonna pick Basharat here. He's a much better process. I trust him over 15 minutes. I trust his minute winning better. So yeah, I'll pick him. But if I'm betting this fight, it's underdog or it's not bet at all.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything else to say about that. He's just going to have to find a way for Reed to cut off the cage, not let this guy get off on his. I mean, because he's circling all the time. This guy Victor Hugo, he's always moving. So Farid's going to have to find a way to cut off that cage and kind of box him against the fence, and then from there kind of try to unload on him, maybe mix in some takedowns. But from there, you got to be careful about this guy's leg lock attack, because like you remember when Farid took down Damon had a nice little triangle attempt on Farid. I know you remember that. So yeah, there could be moments for Victor Hugo here, 100%. I do have to favor the guy with the higher ceiling here, which in my humble opinion is Farid Basharat. Now, this next one, man, I need you to talk to me about this next one, because this is the hardest fight for me to predict on the entire card, and that's next up in the middleweight division. We got Bruno Blindado Silva, who's 23-11, taking on Ismail Nardiev, who's 23-7. Currently, they got it Ismail Nardiev minus 180. They come back on Bruno Blindado's plus 155. Why is this the hardest fight for me to call on the card, Andrew? Because ever since Bruno Blindado, well, firstly, before I mention what happened after the Ferreira fight, you know, this guy came into the UFC like beating serious Russians, knocking them out. I'm talking about Alexander Shlemenko, who is a legendary Russian. I'm talking about Artem Frolov, who was 11-0 at the time. And this dude, Blindado, was over in Russia, knocking these guys out. Now, I know he came to the UFC, he's had a couple, PED suspensions and whatnot. But, man, he still knocked plenty of people out. His power has carried over. I mean, we're talking about a guy in Bruno Silva, Andrew, who has 20 knockouts on his record. He's 20-0 to the knockout, but he's 0-7 to the submission. Pretty interesting, right? But since the Ferreira fight, I feel like Ferreira took a piece of Bruno Blindado's soul. Because Bruno, I thought he looked great in that fight. I know he got wobbled and lost for sure, but I felt like he gave max effort. And like, okay, if you can perform like that against Ferreira, you're gonna destroy a lot of other dudes. But he left a piece of his soul in there. He hasn't looked the same. The Mershart fight was an all-time bad performance. Yep. The Brad Tavares fight, I bet on Bruno there at Dog Oz and cashed, and I don't feel like he looked good there until the knockout. Brendan Allen fight, the Shara fight, and then the Weidman fight was like, shout out to you. You bet Weidman there. Beautiful job. But it's not about Weidman, who's a D1 All-American, just taking this guy down and grinding him. Dude, Weidman outstruck him. Like, this guy, was gun-shy against Weidman, who's been knocked out how many times? Yeah, you could say the threat of the takedown, but Chris was barely wrestling that fight. Chris was standing with this guy. Chris beat this guy standing, man. So I don't see the same Bruno Blindado at all. Even his body's kind of, softening up a bit. And then on the other side with Ismail Nardiev, he left the UFC. He had his original UFC stint. And let me say this, his last 3 fights, he's gotten finished in 2 of his last 3, man. And then the most recent fight, he fought like some 40-year-old dude that didn't belong. But let's talk about the 2 fights that he lost most recently, where he got finished. He was actually winning those fights until he lost. This dude, Nardiev, his kicking game is super, super heavy, and he seems really talented. It's just something happens in these fights. He'll be kicking the shit out of these guys, and he'll get dropped out of nowhere. He'll be beating these dudes up, and then he'll get caught in an armbar. He got leg kick TKO'd against the PFL washout not too long ago as well. But Bruno seems like a walking punching bag since the Pereira fight. So what do you think, man? Because this one I am so stumped on. A few years ago, without question, I'm taking Bruno. But it's not the same Bruno.
Yeah, I actually played some Nordiev early price at minus 115. Obviously, that's long gone. But I do think at this point in their careers, I favor him. I think the current line's probably about right. Because Silva does give himself a reasonably high floor given his punching power. Like you mentioned, he's scored some knockouts, even at times where he didn't look great. Nordiev, I think he is grappling upside. I think he's the better minute winner, which is, why I think the line kind of blew out like it did. At this price, I don't think there's much juice left or much meat left on the bone, given the fact that, Silva could KO him. Nordiev granted, it was by good fighters, but he's gotten KO'd a couple times in Brave recently. But yeah, I think at this point, I don't really think Silva's durability is what it once was. I do think he's softening up too. I never thought he was a great minute winner, and I never thought he was a great grappler. So I'm picking Nordiev in this one.
Yeah, I'm surprised to also be picking Nardiev, but obviously Silva's got a puncher's chance. But like, man, it's just I hate what I've seen since the Ferreira fight, and we've already mentioned all that. So I still think that, listen, you can still catch this guy. I mean, 2 of his last 3 opponents have floored him. Like, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But if Bruno doesn't badly hurt this man, I think he's going to get picked apart. Big kicks, maybe get taken down, stuff like that. So I'm going to go Nardiev by decision, but I do think Bruno has a puncher's chance in this fight. Now, last but not least, kicking off the card in the welterweight division, we got Rinat Fakhretdinov. He's 23, 2-1, taking on the newcomer Carlos Leal. He's 21-5. Currently, they got it Rinat minus 250. The comeback on Carlos Leal is plus 210. So let me ask you this, man. Do you think this line might be a little short just because, this dude was minus 400 against Dalby, was minus 350 against Zaleski? He was only minus 245 against Michailidis. But like, the reason I'm asking that question is because I don't think he's as bad as advertised, Fakhretdinov. In fact, I just think that Zaleski and Dalby are 2 extremely battle-tested vets that have been in the game a long-ass time, and they were able to weather storms and come back and do their thing. But this dude, Leal, man, he hits very, very hard. How many knockouts does Leal have on his record? I'm about to pull that up right now. Yeah, exactly. Leal's got 10 knockouts on his record, never been knocked out once. But the area of the game that Rinat's going to try to expose here. Rinat's going to try to take this man down over and over. And Leal does have a heavy sprawl, but kind of those guys I've been seeing him sprawl against aren't the best level of competition and are not as relentless as Rinat with the takedown attempts. So do you think Rinat's going to be able to grind 2 of these 3 out without getting caught?
Yeah, it's not that he can't do that or he won't do that. I'm not confident in him at this price. Great points on the fact that the guys who have given him trouble are tough UFC guys. That being said, I don't know if he's gotten worse, which seems silly to even say, but when he, dominated battle the way he did, or like he went out there and choked Kevin Lee in a minute, like I had higher hopes for this guy than what I've seen in his last couple fights. I don't trust his gas tank. And for me, that in itself is enough for me not to want to lay this type of price tag against him. That being said, I do expect him to get some takedowns here. Leal's taking this fight on shorter notice. I think his takedown defense is good. I don't think it's great. So I do expect Rinat to get a couple takedowns here. It's just a matter of what happens after that, which I'm less sure about. I personally wouldn't want to be holding a Rinat ticket if I know that Leal is going to get up immediately after being taken down the first couple times, or, if Leal cracks him a couple of times and Rinat gets a couple takedowns, it's relatively close early. Like, I just don't trust I don't trust him late. It's not a one and done that he slowed down. It's happened multiple times in a row now. And, we've seen guys in Abu Dhabi slow down quicker because of the heat. So it wouldn't surprise me if that happened here. That being said, like, I do favor him just because he does have such, dominant top time upside. Like, if he puts on a performance like he did against Brian Battle, I mean, he's obviously covering big price tags. I just don't think I could personally predict that after his last couple.
No, I understand, but I think also when you look at some of the numbers, for example, Rinat's landed a knockdown in 3 of his last 4 fights. Like he knocked down Zaleski. Sometimes you can get carried away when stuff like that happens. Empty the load. The Brian Battle fight. Oh my God, he not only got a knockdown, he got 7 takedowns, 5 takedowns against Dalby. But you know how tough and gritty a guy like Dalby is. Not saying Carlos Leal ain't either, but yeah, it's just like we were talking about. Those guys I mentioned are seriously experienced UFC vets, and Dalby and Zaleski are actually about to rematch. They fought each other on both of their UFC debuts, and Dalby won a split in Brazil, and now they're rematching, I think, next week, which is cool to see two longtime vets. But I do think Renat's going to be able to, get back on that run where he came into the UFC, like you said, super impressive, but kind of had those stumbles, never lost in any of those stumbling blocks. I mean, hey, he still won and went to a draw in both those fights. Like, it's not like he lost those fights, and they were against seriously battle-tested vets. And one more thing I want to say, Andrew, this line opened minus 500. It's literally been cut in half. Now it's a minus 250. So would there be a price you'd be interested in playing Renat, or are you kind of at the point where I don't trust this guy, show me more?
Is there a price? Of course, but is it a price that's going to actually happen now?
What would minus 210 wet your beak?
No.
It'd have to be in the ones?
Yeah.
Okay, got you. Yeah, but I'm going Renat here. All respect to Leal. I'm pretty sure I saw him fight in PFL in Atlanta. I think he knocked someone out in Atlanta. But either way, yeah, I think he's a stud, but just a tough matchup. So, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now, before we get out of here, got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So, in your opinion, Andrew Gombis, what is the fight to watch for UFC 308?
I'm gonna take a second to answer this because I want to make sure I'm getting this right. What is the fight to watch? I'm not gonna say one of the main two fights because I want to get a little creative here. I think anyone could say Topuria, Holloway, or Chimaev, Whittaker. I'm gonna say the fight to watch is Orolbai versus Rębecki.
Fuck, you took mine. No, that's definitely one of the fights to watch. I'm going to go with Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. Listen, Dan Ige, he's always been a badass, but to take a fight against Lopez, not on a week notice, not on a day notice, on 4-hour notice, go out there, win the third round, like, you could lose your next 10 fights and you'll always be a certified badass in our eyes. And then on the other side, Lerone Murphy, undefeated in the UFC, which, like, you might do that your first couple fights, but at this point, it's like, okay, this guy's onto something. This guy's on a run, and I do think he's got top 5 potential, but you can't get into the top 5 if you can't beat Dan Ige. So for that reason, Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige is my fight to watch. Andrew, who is your fighter to watch for UFC 308?
My fighter to watch for UFC 308.
Besides Chris Barnett.
Okay, that changes things for sure. I'm going to say my fighter to watch. I'm going to say Abus Magomedov, and I'll tell you why. I think, he's beaten the lower competition. He's lost to the highest, very different level. He's fought, some guys that you and I would say are probably like lower tier UFC, with all due respect, lower tier UFC caliber, and guys who are like at the absolute highest tier. And so now we're seeing him fight someone who I personally would say is like middle to low tier. And for me, this fight, I feel pretty strongly that I do think he belongs in a higher tier than a guy like Bruno Ferreira. But I think it's a crossroads fight for him. I think if he wins this, he's going to get respect across the board among, the MMA community, because that'd be his most legit win, in my opinion, in the UFC. And if he loses, he'll be 2-3 in the UFC at that point. And then it's not just, he lost to Strickland and Bravo. It's like, he's losing to guys like Bruno Ferreira. So I believe in him in this spot. So I pick him, but I also recognize it's a crossroads spot for him.
For me, my fighter to watch is Magomed Ankalaev. Everyone's saying this guy's the #1 light heavyweight on planet Earth. Show it to me. Prove it to me. I mean, I don't want to see one of these performances like that Thiago Marreta Santos fight where, he's scraping by. Only one guy got dropped in that fight, and it was not Thiago Santos. It was Magomed Ankalaev. I don't want to see another fight like that Jan Blachowicz fight where no disrespect to Jan, but you're fighting against a 40-year-old fighter and you're getting your legs kicked off. And thank God you got a 10-8 deep into the championship rounds to spare me not losing a max bet. But I want him to come out here like not just scrape by Rakic. I want to see something emphatic that shows like, hey, everybody, not me, because I've never been one to call him the best light heavyweight on planet Earth, but I want him to prove all those people that are calling him the best Right. I want to see, like, are you really that guy or not? So this fight's going to let me know that. And for that reason, Magomed Ankalaev is my fighter to watch. Well, Andrew, we did it. It's going down this Saturday early, not late, early. So make sure all my North American friends, y'all tune in. You know, get some coffee, some breakfast, and watch the fights. Y'all can follow my boy Andrew at Bets and Picks MMA, the Magic and Andrew Betting Show. Anything else you want to tell the fans? Something I missed?
No, that's it. Appreciate you having me as always. Always a fun time. And yeah, looking forward to this card. We picked a good one to go over.
Absolutely, yeah. And I will see you in 2 months for the end of the year show that we always do as well. We got our traditions: Topuria Fight Week and end of the year recap. So for all the fans, thank you all so much for all your support. Please smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me a comment if you feel so inclined to share. I truly, truly appreciate it. Make sure you follow Andrew at Bets and Picks MMA. Follow me at Best Fight Picks on Twitter. Half the Battle HQ on Twitter, at Half the Battle Pod on Instagram, and at Half the Battle Podcast on TikTok. On TikTok. Shout out Meticulous for the amazing graphics, the shorts, the reels, everything that you do for me. You are the man. And again, to the fans, love you all so much. So until the next time, let's cash these bets.